Afternoon to those of you who jumped on. We're just going to give it a minute here and give a few others the opportunity to sign on before we get started. So we will begin in just a moment. Thank you. All right, well, we will go ahead and kick off today's Illinois Apex Accelerator webinar. Thank you for joining us for part one of the certification series, Why Certify? Before I hand it over to Kelly, just a few quick things. You will receive a follow-up email by the end of today, and it will include a PDF version of the PowerPoint along with a recording of today's session so you can go back and visit any of the information. I will also include the link to register as a client if you have not worked with an SBDC or an Apex before and would like to receive one-on-one no-cost assistance from Kelly and our team here. You can register as a client and we will be in touch to get your first meeting scheduled. And I will also include links to our upcoming events, including the next three parts of this series in this certification series. You are welcome to ask questions. You can just submit those via the chat box and we will make sure to get them covered before today's session ends. So I'll hand it over to Kelly and we can get started.
Great. Thank you so much, Jordan, and good afternoon, all. Thanks for joining today for the first in our certification series, Why Certify? I'm Keli Krueger-Huhra, and I'm the director of the Illinois Apex Accelerator at the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation. And below my name and title there, you see my contact information as well. So to get started today, I just want you to be aware and briefly introduce you to the services that we're providing through our Illinois Apex Accelerator. We are part of a national organization where there are 97 centers across the United States, and there are 600 government contracting experts that do this across the country and in the territories. We're under the management of the Department of Defense's Office of Small Business Programs, so our support comes through the DoD, but also through our funding partners, the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation and University of Illinois System divisions as well. And we're basically to help expand the number of businesses that can pursue and perform contracts not only with the Department of Defense, all of the federal agencies and state and local governments as well, and also with prime contractors. We're working to provide critical education and training to businesses seeking to be part of the government supply chain. The government wants to bring in additional procurement suppliers for local, state, and federal agencies to get a stronger industrial base, to have greater competition and higher quality goods at lower prices. This is just a listing on the left-hand side of the services that are provided through the Illinois Apex Accelerator. Things like market research, all the things that are government contract opportunity related, SAM, the registrations, also post contract issues that are available to you or needs for you once you get a contract, we will assist with as well. And then on the right side, you see some of the metrics of the clients that we've worked with and assisted. These are the 11 centers within the state of Illinois. We are community-based, so if by chance you have reached our session today and we are not close to you, these are the centers that you can also reach out to for assistance. Okay, so we're going to go through the presentation objectives for today. Why do you want to become certified? Understanding the opportunities of the set-aside programs. What can certifications do for you? If you're going to go through the motions, why would you do that? What are the benefits of being certified? Understanding which certification is right for your business, and an overview of the requirements for each set-aside program. So just a little introduction about the government marketplace. Federal contract spending was $630 billion in fiscal year 23, $14 billion was spent in Illinois, and 3 billion of that went to small businesses. So there is definitely a marketplace, even if you're just restricted to the state of Illinois for small business. But the federal government, that's the world's largest buyer. In total, the federal government spent 170.4 billion with small businesses. The Department of Defense spends more than 67% of the federal procurement budget that's eligible for small businesses. In that same fiscal year, we're talking about fiscal year 23, the DoD awarded more than 92 billion in prime contracts to small businesses. And again, over 2 billion was spent with Illinois small businesses. Now, when you look at the state of Illinois, and their awards are more than $7 billion of contracts each year. If you hear the term SLED, which you see abbreviated there, SLED, that's state, local, and education. So when you combine that spend, that's estimated at 1.5 trillion per year. So the federal agencies have a goal of doing 23% with small business, and then sub-goals breaking down into certain groups. SLED goals and socioeconomic set-aside programs will vary by state, and we'll wrap up today's webinar talking about the state of Illinois in particular. But the bottom line is this is a multi-trillion-dollar marketplace. What's significant for a small business? The socioeconomic contracting programs can really be a boon for small business. Supplier diversity certification is an opportunity for you as a business to grow when you're looking to expand your customer base, you're increasing your sales opportunities and basically establishing new markets and your own suppliers. In this era of supply chain interruptions, and certainly we saw this through COVID, and most businesses today are facing workforce challenges. We find that developing relationships with more suppliers is just good business. So if you have a product or service to sell, becoming a certified diverse supplier can open the doors to access those government contracts and narrow the competition. Companies that get certified as minority, women-owned, veteran-owned businesses, there's also increased opportunities to sell product to corporations on the commercial side. They seek the economic benefits and social responsibilities as well that working with diverse suppliers can provide. Their supplier diversity goals, they're going to be wide-ranging. They can set them individually, and the goals, they are being missed because they're not enough certified suppliers available for them. Their benches are not deep enough. So they are also encouraging certification as well. So if it is feasible for you, if you do qualify for it, we feel that it can position you to benefit from the opportunities, not only from contracting, but the networking and support that you can gain from the community in the diverse supply base. But there is a misconception that getting a certification is the business. It does not. You still have to be able to communicate your real value. And so it's very important to understand it's a tool for you to use. It gives you a leg up, but it certainly is your relationship building, your marketing, and your value add that is going to get the business to come your way. Governmental agencies have procurement rules in place, and they have identified goals, and that's going to be something we're going to discuss in just a minute, to encourage and participate with small businesses. There is a formal process that is required for certification. The due diligence will be done through an application and documentation that you provide. There is an opportunity for a site visit. It depends on the evaluating office. Now, during COVID, those evaluations really occurred over Zoom, if at all. But we have started to see that they're opening back up if they really want to see for some particular reason. The agency that they're certifying, they can schedule that visit with you. Specific certifications are required at specific levels of government. As an example of that, the federal government certifications that we're going to discuss, they are not recognized for state certifications. Now, there are times when you can use those as part of the due diligence that state agencies would use, but for the most part, there are unique certifications between the different organizations, and municipalities will be different as well. So there are multiple choices for the different certifications. We're going to be at really a 10,000-foot view today. So when we do the individual sessions that Jordan mentioned, and we'll look at those again as we close, we will go into much more detail about the choices based on the type of certification that you qualify for. And just to give you a brief history of how we got here with SBA small business programs and certifications, in 1953, the SBA established to provide loans to small businesses, but they weren't involved in government contracting, whether it be assistance or certifications. Between 1968 and 2024, they launched several programs that support that diversity and small business participation. 8A Business Development Program is one, the HUBZone program, ones we're going to talk about today, basically. But up until 2020, there wasn't a formal certification for women-owned small businesses, which is your WOSB or your economically disadvantaged women-owned small business. It's basically just an attestation of that's how you were owned. The Department of Veterans Affairs has up until this point, certified veteran-owned and service-disabled veteran-owns. In January of 2023, the SBA took that over. So now the SBA is the all-encompassing certifying agency for their programs. Now, there is one that we're going to talk about, which is a small disadvantaged business that is also a self-certification, but with an understanding of what the requirements are. There are requirements for it, even though you are making that attestation in SAM on your own without the due diligence of the SBA looking at that. Okay, so here's a graph to really designate those 23% small business goals. Now, when you look at this, you have 5% for women-owned small businesses. Again, that was the WOSB designation. You're going to say, well, Kelly, these don't add up because now you've got 12% for small disadvantaged businesses, which is actually now it's on a progression to increase the opportunity for small disadvantaged businesses. That does include the 8A. The 8A certification set aside goal is 5%. Okay, that 13% is to encourage, again, self-certified small disadvantaged business participation. Although you don't see a solicitation that says just small disadvantaged businesses. You will see a solicitation that says just 8A certified. In other words, the due diligence has been done, criteria is the same, but the actual certification is for an 8A business. And hopefully that will make more sense as we go into a certain level of detail. The HUBZone businesses, those are 3%, and service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, 3%. So in general, 23, the agencies can exceed those goals, and many times they do. They can set internal goals. For example, there's a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, but unfortunately, we've not been able to get a veteran-owned small business set aside. But the agencies themselves, Department of Defense, for example, they can say internally to their contracting offices, we're going to have a goal of 3%, 5%, whatever that might be for veteran-owned businesses. The bottom statement there is just to give you a reference that small businesses, there's a set-aside marketplace between $10,000, which is the micro purchase threshold, to $250,000, and that in between there is considered your simplified acquisition threshold. And under most normal circumstances, those purchases are always going to be with a small business wherever they're available. So when you look at certifications in general, there are two basic requirements. If you have that status, women-owned, for example, 51% or more of your company must be held by one or more women, or whatever category you're applying for, and 51% of your company with that ownership must also be controlled. So the control aspect must be able to demonstrate that qualifying owners have the requisite management experience. They're going to look at your resume. What is your background to be able to run that operation? Make those strategic decisions, those tactical decisions. operating independently, governing, having no one within the organization be able to circumvent a decision that you want to make for the direction of that company. Generally speaking, that owner that qualifies under that diversity requirement holds the highest office position. And again, makes those long-term decisions. They expect you to work full-time in the business. Now, normal working hours vary dependent on what type of business you're in. So there is a little bit of leeway for that to be an 8 to 4 or a 9 to 5 as a normal work day. But basically, they want you to be all in on responsibility for your business. Okay, so what socioeconomic programs do we have? Again, we have the small disadvantaged business, which is the 8A. We have the women-owned. We have the service-disabled veteran-owned, and in that case, you have a service-connected disability as determined by the Department of Veterans Affairs. And we have the historically underutilized business zone. What that is more dictated towards the company itself versus the owner. Now, you do have to be owned and controlled at least 51% by a U.S. citizen, but it's where your office is located, your principal office, where most of the people report to at some point in the work day. Principal location is located in a HUBZone, and at least 35% of the firm's employees live in a HUBZone. And we'll look at that a little bit closer. So let's start with the small disadvantaged business, because if you recall, I said that was one that you self-certified for. And this basically, the CFR is the Code of Federal Regulations in government contracting. You'll see that often, that designation quite a bit. Code of Federal Regulations and the Federal Acquisition Regulations go hand in hand. But this is telling you that you need to be controlled by a socially and economically disadvantaged individual. Well, what does that look like? So to be socially disadvantaged, here's the definition: those who have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias within American society because of their identities as members of groups and without regard to their individual qualities. Social disadvantage must stem from circumstances beyond their control. Then, in addition to the social disadvantage, you have the economic disadvantage. And the criteria for that is your personal income averaged over the past 3 years cannot exceed $400,000 per year. Your net worth, so taking out of your total assets, things like your primary residence, your equity in the business that you own, withdrawals or your 401k, your retirement plans, the net worth cannot be more than $850,000 for that individual that is socially disadvantaged. And again, the fair market value of all assets, everything all in, I believe you still do get to exclude your qualified retirement accounts. That cannot exceed $6.5 million. So the 8A business development then takes that same status, that's small disadvantaged business, and actually goes to a certification program that is not just for contracting, but it's for business development. That gives you access to business support. It builds capacity and helps you grow through the contracts that you get through the 8A business development program. But keep in mind that this is only for 9 years and only once. So in your space of being a business owner, doesn't matter how many businesses you own, as an individual, you only get to be in this program one time, and it's only for 9 years. So when you take the session that we host on SBA certifications, this is one that we'll spend quite a bit of time on because again, it is more than contracting. The business development side of that, where they actually provide you management and technical assistance, we want to talk more about that. Part of the program is to provide you things like the 7J training program. This is actually through an outside organization that the SBA contracts with. They'll offer you, for example, a service to help you build your clients, capture your opportunities, find solicitations available out there in general, but also for 8A firms. But this is provided free as part of the business development side of an 8A program. So this is a very good program. It's going to be the first 4 years of really building up those 8A contracts and finding those, helping you find those opportunities. Then the last 5 years of the program or so, they're going to be looking for you to commit to them other contracts outside of the 8A program, with the understanding that at the end of 9 years, you're going to graduate and you cannot have nothing but 8A contracts or the majority of 8A contracts, and then lose the status of an 8A vendor. And those contracts, without those contracts, you're in a very difficult position for revenues. Okay, so social disadvantage, then, we said what it was, but the way that we show that is that those individuals that have been subjected to racial or ethnic prejudice or cultural bias, it's established through giving examples of discrete incidents of bias, which negatively impacted your entry into or advancement in the business world. This is what is referred to as a social disadvantage narrative. When we discuss this in more detail, we'll talk about the format and how those narratives are written as part of the application process. Okay, so again, staying with our 10,000-foot view, now we're going to move on to the Woman-Owned Small Business Federal Contract Program. And this program, again, the uniqueness of this program is that there are two ways you can certify: a woman-owned small business and an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business. The main difference is the financial information that's provided for the economic side of the application. What is different about this, in addition to having two ways to certify as a woman-owned small business, is that there are opportunities for sole sourced at the discretion of the contracting officer. They look at sole source authority, which is given to them for contracts valued at less than $6.5 million for manufacturing, or $4 million or less for other contracts. And if they feel like they are going to get a fair and reasonable price and determine there's only one woman-owned business out there that can provide that, then that reasonable expectation could lead them to a sole source award. Now, the women-owned contract program does designate the North American Industry Classification System codes, the NAICE codes. Hopefully all are familiar with those. Those are industry codes that are assigned to each solicitation and to what you do as a business owner. There are codes that the SBA has determined either women are underrepresented or significantly underrepresented in opportunities for those commodities and services. So there are codes designated for this program, unlike the other programs where it doesn't matter what code is being used, how they're classifying the solicitation opportunity. In this case, it does with the women-owned small business contracting program. So what I have listed here for you on the left are the top codes that are set aside, limiting competition to only women-owned small businesses. And you can see those: administrative management, custom computer programming, engineering, computer design, professional management. And that does not mean the other codes are not also set aside, but these are the top ones in that category. And then participation in the program, about 30% of those businesses that are certified as economically disadvantaged, meaning they went to the next step and declared their capacity, their financial resources. And the other 70% are women-owned small businesses. Okay. What this looks like is there are about 733 NAICE codes where they are set aside for women-owned small businesses. Okay. The numbers continue to increase. First thing we look at in preparing for certification is, does the code you work under, or any of the codes that you work under, assuming you work under multiple codes, are they designated in that grouping of 733? There are an additional 21 codes, so much smaller grouping, that require you to have the economically disadvantaged, and we'll look at that requirement. But those are underrepresented, meaning women are participating, but they are participating at a lower rate. Women owned, which does not require the economic side, they are substantially underrepresented in their categories of the 733 industries. And so the contracting officer, the rule of two is kind of a generic application, but the contracting officer, if they have a reasonable expectation that two or more, in this case, women-owned businesses, will submit an offer, they're going to set that aside, particularly over the $250,000 level. We looked at that simplified acquisition between 10 and 250. Pretty much expected that that will be a small business above that $250,000 level. That's really where the rule of two is coming in for those expectations. And then the contract, of course, must be awarded at a fair market price. Now, this is going to look very familiar because this is the same criteria for the 8A. Economically disadvantaged, so being woman or women owned, is part of that. The other side, the economically disadvantaged, is that same criteria about personal net worth, assets minus liabilities. Liabilities cannot exceed $850,000. The 3-year income average, no more than $400,000 per year. And the fair market value of all assets is $6.5 million. Now, in standardizing this economic requirement versus the 8A, the SBA, in their consistency, has been able to put their platform together for all certifications to be done in one space. So one system houses all of these certifications that we're looking at. So if you qualify as an 8A contractor, so you do the social disadvantage narrative, and you fall under these criteria and you're women owned, then you're applying for everything that you qualify for in one step. And we'll talk more about that again when we talk about SBA certifications. Okay, and just to clarify, because sometimes this does get a little bit confusing. You have, your Venn diagram here where you have women-owned small businesses, and then you have a subset of the economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. We saw that 70-30. So if you are woman-owned, you are not necessarily economically disadvantaged unless you applied in that way. If you are economically disadvantaged, you are woman-owned. So your red circle qualifies for both. Your blue circle is just as a woman-owned small business. Okay, if there's any questions on that, make sure you throw those in the chat as Jordan mentioned. Okay, now we're going to move on to the Veteran Small Business Certification Program. We fondly refer to that as VetCert. Again, this was a certification that was not previously done by the SBA. It was done by Veterans Affairs, the Office of Small Business Programs. So in this case, SBA has taken that over and transitioned it onto that new platform as well. But it is really to empower veteran entrepreneurs by certifying them and giving them additional opportunities to build up the contract opportunities. This came about as a result of a lawsuit, well, famous lawsuit called the Kingdomware case. And in that case, there was a veteran-owned and a non-veteran-owned business competing with the Veterans Affairs on a software solicitation. Veterans Affairs did not choose that veteran-owned business. They chose a non-veteran-owned. And they were sued to say, you are the Veterans Affairs. Why are you not providing opportunities at a priority level for veteran-owned businesses? They lost. That it was agreed that they would have priority sourcing for veterans and service disabled veterans. And so that is the rule now. So they have not only the Service Disabled Veteran Program for federal contracting in general as a set aside, again, restricting competition to only service disabled veterans, but inside the VA, they have their own sourcing priority program, and we'll see that in just a minute, where they also include veteran business owners. So just to define, if there's any question about what does it mean to be a veteran? Veteran status means active duty as is defined by Veterans Affairs and full-time duty in the armed forces other than active duty for training, full-time duty other than for training purposes as a commissioned officer of the regular or reserve corps of the public health service, and then they give the date, and military time that has only training and or guard and reserve component time without active duty time does not qualify for this program. Okay, and I did mention the VA in encouraging veteran and service disabled veteran participation. They set aside at least 7% of all their contracts, all their award dollars each year, but you do still need to be certified. So while they keep their own program and in support of veteran businesses, they do look to the resources of the SBA to do the due diligence to confirm the status of that veteran-owned business. So they will use that list, that directory provided by the SBA to determine that they are truly certified and the due diligence has been done to designate their status. Okay, and I do want to throw out there too, I work with a lot of clients that are not necessarily looking to start off with government contracting, but they do want to take advantage of this program. So I always want to make all of our veteran business owners aware that you do need certification for a surplus personal property program. This program, this is GSA, General Services Administration, federal government equipment that's being dispositioned. So the agencies no longer need it, they've replaced it, and they look for potential reuse of that equipment with veteran and service disabled veteran-owned businesses. So this surplus property program, each state has an agency that provides the support for that. We have the Central Management Services in Springfield, and they will monitor this program. Once you get certified by the federal government and the state government, then they will give you an application to apply to this program, and it's first come, first served. Any property that has been disposed of by the federal government, and also there's an online auction platform for state property that is being donated into this program. Now, the state property is an auction where the federal property is first come, first served, and it's just a matter of a cost to get the logistics, to get the product wherever it is, that piece of equipment or whatever it might be, to your facility. So arranging for those logistics, the cost of that. So you want to verify with the originator of the equipment that it's good to go and it's worth the value of the cost of the transportation. In the case of the state, it is pennies on the dollar, but it is an online auction for that property. So again, they have there was a Veteran Small Business Enhancement Act a couple of years ago that opened up this property for veteran business owners, but you do have to go through the certification process. Okay, so now we're going to move on to hub zones. What's a hub zone? So we talked about the historically underutilized business zones. Those are areas that are designated by census tract and can also be designated by the governor. Many rural areas, the governors of the states decide that they want to build up those areas to increase employment opportunities, stimulate capital investment, and empower those communities by economically leveraging that economic development. Governor can designate those. Otherwise, those are done by the census. As you know, we recently, a couple of years ago, completed the census, and after a year and a half or so, they came out with the new HUBZone designations, and those will be going forward for the next until the next census. And then on an annual basis, the governor designated areas. But they want to help small firms in these communities gain access to federal contract opportunities. Typically, those areas are designated because they have low median household incomes or higher unemployment, or it could be both from the surrounding census, the surrounding tracts and communities. At any given time, there are really only about 4,500 small businesses. You do have to be small, in addition to the location, that can qualify and that do get certified and maintain that level of certification in the HUBZone program. One of the tricky things, you go in and we'll look at the requirements for this. 35% of your employees or more must reside in a HUBZone. In getting that certification with a minimum of 35% of your employees, you are going to need to make a good faith effort to maintain that 35%. And if you're in a position to be competing on a contract, you're going to have to make sure that you've got at least that level of employees in order to get and maintain the HUBZone designation, and then i.e. maintain your contract. So being located in a HUBZone is just part of that. And then going through your employee records and confirming that your employees and you as the owner, also included in that, actually reside in a HUBZone. Doesn't have to be the same HUBZone where your business is located. It just has to be a HUBZone. Okay? To find out if the business and the employees are located in a HUBZone, you use the HUBZone map, and literally you could put that in your browser, SBA HUBZone map. Get this, where the red circle is, the address box, put the address in there, and it will come up if it's qualified or non-qualified as a HUBZone. We'll also give you some additional information if it's qualified currently, but it's being rezoned or redistrict to where you've got a limited amount of time. Then it gives you the opportunity to consider, is that time long enough to make it worth your while to apply for the HUBZone? If you're on the border and the business would be impacted by that redistricting, then it gives you a chance to understand that upfront. Okay. When you look at these certifications, apply for these certifications and actually qualify, the verification that you have that status is shown in a database referred to as the Dynamic Small Business Search. So I just want to make you aware of this. This is a very important database in general, but this is where your certifications will reside. Bringing this to your attention and noting that if you have a SAM.gov entity registration, which is required, that's another discussion, but it is required for certification and for federal government contracting, and many times government assistance as well. But having your profile in here allows the SBA to go in and make those updates. So if you apply for any of the certifications, once it's reviewed and approved, the update will be made in this database, and that's where the contracting officers or a prime contractor would find out, hey, I can find all the 8As, I can find all the women-owned businesses that are certified, which is a lot of what this database is used for. They can find you then to reach out to you about opportunities or to verify that they can put their solicitation, whatever they're buying, into one of these set-aside designations because they see a substantial amount of businesses that are certified in that way. And so on the right, you just see a screenshot of the SBA database, this Connect database, which is where you will go if you have a profile to gain access to make any other updates. You are not allowed update your status for certifications. You are allowed to market your business on this database. Okay. Again, any questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. So now we're going to move on. We've covered all of the opportunities for federal government contracting. Now we're going to move on to the state of Illinois and what that looks like. Okay, so the state of Illinois they have consolidated also on one platform, what they call the Business Enterprise Program, and the sister to that is the Veteran Business Program. So when you hear BEP certification, this is what they're talking about. So in the state of Illinois, from 1984, they created the Business Enterprise for minorities, females, and persons with disability. Okay, so again, encouraging the diversity in the sourcing. And they have been working diligently to increase the number of vendors and have partnerships with the city of Chicago, Cook County, and a couple of others to have some reciprocity in the certifications that the city of Chicago does, Cook County does, PACE, Metra, those agencies that are active in sourcing the BEP program will also work with. That is the recognition part where you can get, leads to other procurement opportunities. And I do think it's important to note all of these certifications that we're talking about are free, including the SBA certifications. You're putting your time and resources into preparing the paperwork and getting the documents ready, but the certifications themselves are free. So if you ever are contacted by an agency, outside service that understands because of searches you've done that you are looking for certification, please note that if they are asking for money, you are paying them for a service. It is no fee to do the registrations, and worst case scenario, it could even be a scam. So buyer beware. Most certainly, if that is ever an issue, if you're ever considering funding something like what we're talking about today, please reach out to an Apex Accelerator before you would do that and make sure it is legitimate. So as of January 1st of 2022, Commission on Equity and Inclusion, an Illinois agency, has taken over the Business Enterprise Program. Okay, what does it mean? In the state of Illinois, if you are a state of Illinois agency, you have a goal to spend at least 30% of your goods and services purchases with BEP certified vendors. And then another 3% of your budget goes to certified veteran-owned businesses. Okay? So 30% goods and services from women, minorities, and persons with disability, and 3% from veteran-owned businesses. So what does it take? So I mentioned early on that you have to be a small business with the SBA. The SBA determines that by the table of size standards. So your NAICS code determines your size. In the case of the state of Illinois, the gross sales is what determines your requirement for the BEP program, and that's $150 million or less in annual gross sales. 51% owned and controlled by minority women or person with disability. Again, that's majority share. Same as with the SBA, 51% is the minimum. They control the day-to-day functions. Again, very similar to the decision making, having that expertise, that experience that will make you successful in business. And you do have to be a citizen of the United States or a resident alien. Okay. Again, it's a one-stop shop on the certification platform. These are the different ways for you to be certified. Minority Women Business Enterprise, that's referenced as an MWBE or WMBE. Women Business Enterprise, WBE, and it can be woman or women owners. Minority Business Enterprise, a person with disability, a veteran-owned or a service-disabled veteran-owned business. So when you go into this platform, you will see that these requirements will be listed in general, and you'll be able to say applicable or not applicable, depending on which of these certifications you're going to be applying for. In mentioning reciprocity with other agencies, IDOT, Cook County, City of Chicago, Chicago Transit, PACE, Metra, the Women's Business Development Center, and the Minority Supplier Development Center. Okay. Now, the reciprocity only goes one way. those other agencies don't recognize the BEP. They want their own certifications, but the BEP will recognize theirs. So now I want to move on to one that's a hybrid. This one is a bit different because this is a federal program. As you see here on the description, it's a federally mandated program through the U.S. Department of Transportation, USDOT, which is facilitated by an agency in each state. So, of course, for us, that's the Illinois Department of Transportation. And this is um, again, trying to ensure non-discriminatory contracting opportunities for small businesses, and that small businesses that are owned and controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Okay? Now, unlike the 8A program, there is not a narrative, or there is a presumption that minorities, women, and other small businesses that can state in this case. So women and minorities have the presumptive of qualifying for this program. Others could potentially qualify, but there will need to be the narrative in that case to describe the disadvantage that small business owner is faced with. Okay, so here is again, referring to the Code of Federal Regulations. The DBE regulations mandate minorities and women-owned businesses be afforded the opportunity to participate in IDOT federally assisted highway, transit, and airport contracts. Okay, so basically, not only is this a U.S. Department of Transportation sponsored certification, it's specific as to where DBE criteria, goals are set on particular types of contracts, highway, the transit, and airport. Okay, so it applies to recipients of funds. Now, this is program funding for federal aid and highway, federal transit funds, and airport funds, airport concession funds. Only businesses involved in highway construction related services, which is non-vertical construction is how that's referred to. Consultants, supplier, equipment, rental, trucking services that are considered for participation in this program. And again, referencing reciprocity, there is a Illinois Unified Certification Program. You hear that referenced as UCP. And that UCP program really means that if Illinois Department of Transportation, City of Chicago, Chicago Transit Authority, Metra, or PACE, any of those agencies certify you in this program, you are part of the program for all. So that certification means that City of Chicago will honor it and all agencies will honor it. Generally speaking, downstate, we go through the Illinois Department of Transportation for the certification program. Specifically, the difference there is they do theirs by paper, where these others, especially the two that are highlighted in red, and most of the agencies, because of COVID, they went to an online process. IDOT has been working on it for quite a while, but they're just not there yet. So theirs is a paper process. So all of the documents that you provide to them will be delivered to the Springfield office. However, IDOT does have some supportive services. And if you ever want to know more, they do a big conference each year in Springfield for DBE participants, which is quite good. And those folks that come will take advantage of the classroom participation that is offered, and there's also some funding that's offered for other educational opportunities for those that are either quoting on IDOT contracts or actually certified through IDOT as a DBE. So there is also a personal net worth statement that is required as part of this process. They give you the form. It is a very extensive form declaring your assets, liabilities, so that they can determine your personal net worth, but it does have to be less than $2.047 million to be considered as a candidate for this program. And there again, it talks about the things that you can exclude, um, such as the equity in your primary residence. And if you want to know more, there's a website here. I will mention too that when you get these slides, these are clickable links. These should be hot links in the presentation. So they should take you right to the source of where you can find out more information. And again, the presumptive disadvantage where, it is assumed you can apply for this program for Black Americans, Hispanic Americans, Native Americans, Asian Pacific Americans, Subcontinent Asian, and women. Okay, and then other minorities can be found to be disadvantaged. Again, that does require a narrative and a description of that disadvantage to the agency. Okay, each owner whose status is relied upon for DBE certification has to submit a U.S. Department of Transportation signed and notarized personal net worth statement. So it will involve all in the organization to apply. You're required to conduct size determinations on all businesses, and there are some industry size caps set by the SBA. And then the program has a $30.72 million regardless of the SBA standards. Any firm whose gross revenues averaged over the preceding 3 years exceed that cap are not eligible for the DBE program. Okay, and then just talks about in general what those outside of the SBA regulations are specifically for these types of services. Okay, now I'm not going to have time to go into this today. Where they apply in the individual certifications, we'll talk a little bit more, but there are private diverse business certifications. So if you're working business to consumer or business to business, these certifications may be right for you. They are not government related. There is one case where the government will accept their certification as a part of, and that being the SBA, as part of their due diligence. But in general, these certifications alone would not be enough for government contracting. But in the case of the third parties, they do have corporate sponsors, and they'll indicate that the corporate sponsors will use their certification directories to find opportunities with these businesses. So they are listed here. Again, we're not going to go into them. They're not government related, but they are available to you. Again, in the commercial or the consumer marketplace, these may be requested. So I wanted to make you aware of it. Okay, so this being part one of a 4-part series, it's important for you to know the other series and the other classes in the series, and Jordan will reinforce this in her follow-up. But part 2 is on February 4th, and we're going to go into more detail on specifically the SBA small business certifications. So get more granular on what it takes to actually apply process-wise for those certifications. On February 18th, we're going to go into more detail on the State of Illinois Business Enterprise Program. And then on March 20th, we'll go into detail on the U.S. Department of Transportation's DBE program. Okay, and then just to save the date for this, on March 11th and 12th, those who feel like they are well-versed and ready for government contracting, there will be a government contracting summit put on by all of 11 Apex accelerators in the state of Illinois in Forest Park. And there will have some educational opportunities. We'll have a full day of networking, chances to meet government agencies, federal government, state, and local government agencies. It is being held in the Chicago area, so there will be some Chicago agencies there as well. And we'll be talking about building your capacity, networking, and building relationships as well with those potential customers out there from the government side. Also, prime contractors will be represented. Okay, so now I'm gonna, I know that was a lot of information. You will have the slides, but I'm gonna turn it over to Jordan to see if we have any questions.
Thanks so much, Kelly. We actually don't have any questions submitted right now, but I know, like Kelly had just mentioned, that's a lot and it's a lot crammed into 1 hour. So, in that follow-up email, again, with the recording and a PDF version of the PowerPoint, so you can revisit any of those live links Kelly mentioned, I will include the link to register as a client. So if any of this you want to dive deeper into with Kelly, you can schedule a one-on-one no-cost meeting to chat with Kelly either via Zoom or here in our office in person, if you are local to the Champaign-Urbana area. So I'll make sure all of that's included in the email. So if you're reviewing the information and something comes to mind that you want to chat about, you will have the option to do that. And then I'll also include our events calendar so you can join us for any of our upcoming Apex webinars as well. All right, we did get one question. It says, I want to register for the other sessions. Can you provide a link to do so? So actually, I did just notice, Kelly, I wrote an email to you. I'm getting ready to send it. We don't have the next one posted yet. And so we will make sure we get that posted ASAP. I will put the events calendar link in that email so that you can just bookmark that, go back and check it. Like Kelly said, that next one is on February 4th. So that will be part 2. And then of course, we'll have part 3 and part 4 following that as well. So all of our sessions are always offered at no cost. So you're welcome to join us for all of them if you'd like to.
Okay, great.
All righty. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in, but that follow-up email will go out before the end of the day today. So be on the lookout for that. Otherwise, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you so much, Kelly, for presenting.
Thank you, Jordan. And thanks for all that attended. Everyone have a good weekend.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye now.